There seems to be a few Russian talking points floating around on the Republican side of Congress. What is the deal? First up is our favorite maybe Russian agent, Marjorie Greene, who called NATO unpatriotic and wants it defunded.
My amendment strikes funding for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, Security Investment Program. My amendment would strike over $433 million in NATO funding from the bill. America should not be doling out hundreds of millions of dollars to international organizations to help them fight their enemies, especially when they are unwilling to fight for themselves.
To be fair, this isn't anything we haven't heard before, whether from her or from Donald Trump or from other Republicans. The general point that they're trying to make is that the U.S. has its own border to worry about, so any money going overseas should be reinvested domestically. But Democratic Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz had a pretty succinct yet brutal response for Greene.
I think the sponsor of the amendment has shown pretty clear evidence that she has no idea what the NATO Security Investment Program is actually funding. We're talking about funding that is provided to build infrastructure that takes care of our troops that are overseas.
She goes on to explain that she's been to military bases around the world and that the conditions of some of the existing infrastructure is quote-unquote appalling. She said that there are hangar doors that don't even close properly because they're rusted over. She insisted that Greene's proposed amendment would actually endanger our service members overseas. Greene's sentiments echoed something Trump said earlier this year at a rally in South Carolina. He said that if he were to become president again, he wouldn't want to help or protect any NATO members who don't contribute enough money to military spending from Russian aggression.
I said, you got to pay up. They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want.
It is absolutely rich being lectured about paying bills from a man who notoriously does not pay his bills. But that aside, that's not even how NATO works. According to reporting from PBS NewsHour, NATO members don't pay membership dues, nor do they pay specific military defense fees. They contribute to a fund that's largely administrative. The only way his grievance makes any kind of sense is if he wanted countries to put more of their own GDP into their own military defense budgets. As of last summer, member nations are expected to spend 2% of their GDP on their own defense so that they're able to contribute to the organization's joint defense efforts. But 2% isn't a requirement, it's a goal. There is no quote-unquote bill that needs to be paid in that respect. Anyway, this isn't the first time that we've heard Trump disparage NATO and threaten to pull the U.S. out of a decades-long treaty, a move that would essentially destroy the alliance, embolden Russia, and alienate the United States from its European allies. Back when Trump was president, around the same time that he had secret meetings with Vladimir Putin, he talked a lot about pulling out of NATO, which concerned even his most warmongery of secretaries and advisors, including Defense Secretary Jim Mattis and National Security Advisor John Bolton. Obama's Undersecretary of Defense said, quote, it would destroy 70 plus years of painstaking work across multiple administrations, Republican and Democrat, to create perhaps the most powerful and advantageous alliance in history. And it would be the wildest success that Vladimir Putin could dream of. In a 2022 live event with the Washington Post, John Bolton discussed his memoir in which he revealed that Trump allegedly wanted to leave NATO back in 2018 but didn't. Bolton said, quote, in a second Trump term, I think he may well have withdrawn from NATO, and I think Putin was waiting for that. But moving on, Tommy Tuberville, the senator from Alabama, who is best known for his military blockade that brought our own American military to a near standstill, is now making some very pro-Russian, very Putin-friendly claims that the New Republic says is, quote, deranged even for him. In a recent appearance on Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, Tuberville called Ukrainian President Zelensky a dictator, and he said that it was understandable that Putin just doesn't want U.S. missiles in Ukraine pointed at Russia. We wouldn't want Russian missiles in Mexico, would we? Unfortunately, for whatever point Tuberville is trying to make, that's not what Putin himself has said regarding his reasons as to why he's decided to invade Ukraine, sacrificing 500 million of his own men to do so. He believes in the idea of Imperial Russia. He believes that it's his duty to expand the reaches of his imagined empire, and he believes that Ukraine rightfully belongs to Russia and he wants it back. But here's what Tuberville had to say about Russian land grabs.
How many TV clips have you seen of a battle in Ukraine? Zero in the last 6, 7, 8 months. It's one-sided. Putin just kind of sitting back, watching what's going on, wondering, hey, when y'all gonna come over and we'll draw a line here. He doesn't want Ukraine. He doesn't want Europe. Hell, he's got enough land of his own. He just wants to make sure that he does not have United States weapons in Ukraine pointing at Moscow.
Sure. So as jarring as that is to hear from an American senator, it's also just factually incorrect. It misrepresents an entire situation, but Tuberville says that the reason why Americans are so against Putin is because we're all being manipulated by media propaganda. And when Tuberville says that, by the way, he's actually quoting Putin. Earlier this year, Tuberville said, quote, "You can tell Putin's on top of his game." One thing he said that it really rung a bell is the propaganda media machine over here, they sell anything they possibly can to go after Russia. Anyway, media propaganda is not a legitimate claim when, again, Putin told us his reasons for invading Ukraine himself. Furthermore, just this week, Putin threatened to not only use nukes in Ukraine, but also to arm other countries to attack US and Ukrainian allies who are against him. Why are sitting Republican congresspeople pushing talking points and legislation that would benefit Russia? I suppose that's anyone's guess, but I'm gonna leave it there. That's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out my podcast, Modern Context.